From B Media Production, this is B Podcasting. Engage your audience with podcasts.
Welcome to Episode 7, Season 2 of B Podcasting. I'm Chris Ashmore. Now, this episode's a bit different from our normal serving. We examine 6 business leaders and why they've chosen to embrace podcasting to engage more deeply with their audiences and help build their own personal brands. More of that in a minute. No Nick Schulberger this episode, but don't worry, he'll be back next time. We've been flat out these days building branded content. The most recent is a podcast we produced called Paper Cuts for Officeworks. Hosted by Jason Cunningham, it follows the fascinating stories of 5 Aussie business owners who've overcome their own pain points to build their companies. It's in the show notes. Check it out to understand what a branded podcast could sound like for your own business. We're also proud to announce the soon-to-be released Season 2 of Big Sis Pod. Season 1 featured on iTunes for 8 weeks, and it was a finalist at the Australian Podcast Awards. And Season 2 is looking to be bigger and better than ever. Yes, the future's looking big for podcasting. The number of listeners listening on a regular basis keeps increasing, which just reflects everyone's appetite for quality audio content. When we talk about brands on this show, we're not just talking about the big organisations or even small businesses for that matter. Brands can mean your own personal brand, and it's becoming more of a thing for people to build a tribe around themselves. If you look at Richard Branson, the late great Steve Jobs and Australia's own Mark Bouris, they're all leaders of very successful businesses and all with their own personal brands. You don't have to run a multinational business. Individuals from all walks of life are building their own brands. You take, for instance, best-selling author Seth Godin or Malcolm Gladwell of Blink and Outliers fame, or even Tim Ferriss, the champion of the 4-hour work week. All have grown a tribe of followers and all have successful podcasts with incredibly high numbers of listeners. Closer to home, we have the bucket list guy, Travis Bell, who's grown an incredible following in Australia and internationally. You'll hear shortly how his own podcast helps him amplify his message and grow his audience of followers. Yep, this episode's all about building your personal brand with podcasting. We speak with several executive coaches, consultants, thought leaders and business advisors on how they are using podcasting to connect more deeply with their audiences and engage on issues their tribes care about. First, Zoe Routh is a leadership expert who inspires big thinkers with big hearts to make a difference. Zoe's podcast has been an experiment in the making, and an experiment that's really paid off.
My podcast is named very creatively Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast. So I didn't put too much effort into the title. The reason I started it is I wanted to expand my audience. So I wanted positioning and I wanted visibility. And I really wanted to focus on, eventually after about 50 episodes, I worked out that I wanted to focus on boundless leadership. So I've narrowed down my topic to really think about that. And boundless leadership is all about dissolving barriers to success and exploring what's possible. That's the real boundless piece.
What challenges did you have in doing it?
Oh, well, the challenges were getting it set up. All the tech stuff was completely new to me. So I had to do lots of research in a very crammed schedule to try and work out what pieces of equipment I needed, how to get it set up, how to get it linked up to iTunes, which I have to say was an exercise in anxiety doing that. It was so complicated and I kept going round and round and round in circles until I finally worked it out. God, that was a huge challenge. So I think most of the challenges have been technology related, and then interviewing people, and then the sound quality was crap because the connection was bad. So that was been a huge, huge challenge. And I guess probably the second challenge is all about content creation. So because I publish weekly, that's a lot of content to generate, and I do it in 2 ways. I do it through interviews and I also do it through my own general broadcasting. So I present different ideas and content for the audience, as well as interviewing other experts. So keeping on top of the content production has been the second challenge.
What advice to others would you give in podcasting?
It took me about half a year, maybe even close to a year, to really get more focused on my message and the topic I wanted to cover. And I think more focused is better. So a more specific audience, a more specific topic makes it paradoxically easier to generate content on. So, and people find it more attractive because they know your podcast is about blah, and they can go in and really get what they need out of that. So I find that too, is that I enjoy podcasts that are more specific like that, with a very particular angle as opposed to a general one. So that's the first thing. I guess the second thing is to have a regular cadence, because if you do it frequently enough, and for me it's weekly, you get into a routine of that and you get used to generating the content and thinking about it, and your audience builds as a result.
That's Zoe Routh. Another brand leader is Travis Bell, perhaps better known as the bucket list guy. He encourages people, his followers and anyone who hears him speak at seminars, to write down a list of things they would like to do before they die. His podcast, he says, is a powerful way to broaden his message.
Look, I started podcasting because I listen to them myself. It's a classic, when you go for a walk, run, workout, or doing something else, I can listen to a podcast. And I think when we met, mate, we both agreed that it's really hard to watch a video these days. Although everyone's on video, you can't like watch a video and do something else. You have to just shut it all down, and you can't multitask a video. So you can, driving, for instance, I do all my podcast listening during driving. Why did I do a podcast? To get access, to provide a platform so I could meet cool people that are doing stuff that, I've got networks bigger than mine, I call database climbing, and to reach these sort of people. And because I'm genuinely a very curious person, and I love just discovering how did someone do that. So for me, they're business people that I admire, role models, authors, other speakers maybe, who are, champions of causes, or people who have done, I've got a few Everest summiters on there. The great thing about being a speaker is I share stages with some amazing people, and then I can go, hey, Darren Hardy of success.com, hey, can we do a podcast episode? Yeah, no worries. And there's a level of respect there, which is really cool.
That's the bucket list guy, Travis Bell. Another podcaster is Kat LeBlanc, an online business strategist. Kat helps entrepreneurs start and grow an online business.
My podcast is called Your Business, Your Rules. I started because I knew that my written content could only go so far in terms of engaging my audience. People really got a lot out of my blogs, but it will be rare that they get really excited about them. I wanted to find a way of creating a deeper connection with my people and be able to be more personal as well. I knew I had great content, but writing was too flat, and also video didn't feel right either. I'm an auditory person, so podcasting seemed like the logical choice. It also felt like a missing piece in my business to drive sales, as I really wanted higher engagement. I was also hoping for a side benefit of reaching a broader audience, as I expected some people would listen to my podcast, but not necessarily be on my email list. I'm just over 9 months in now, and yes, I'm finding people really enjoy the podcast, and I'm getting lots more positive feedback than when I had just been writing. Often people say how much a particular episode helped them, and they recount my stories to me. In terms of getting clients, has also been really making a difference. Potential clients can binge listen and really get a feel for who I am and what I stand for, so I'm getting a lot more hands-off sales because of it. I've also been surprised by who listens. I've had a lot of peers tell me they listen, whereas I was expecting more newbies, which is typically my market.
What's your advice to others looking to do podcasts?
So I think it's important to understand the time investment, either in creating your own content or in researching people that you interview. When I was doing everything myself, just creating a 10-minute episode would take nearly a whole day. So now it's 2 hours, but in the beginning it was a day because I'm aiming for quality and there's a lot that has to go on in the background. I think it's also a long-term game, so you do need to be committed to it. To me, it's a bigger commitment than writing a book because once I'm done writing the book, it's done, whereas this is a perpetual project that I'm continually growing. I do think, though, it creates a very high level of engagement, at least equal, if not higher than video, because you're hanging out with your listener one-on-one and they develop a relationship with you in their everyday life.
That's Kat LeBlanc. Mel Kettle's a communications specialist with a very niche angle. She helps member-based organisations engage and communicate more effectively with their members. She's a strong believer in the engagement podcasts bring to an audience.
Well, you can have a conversation, and a lot of the feedback that I had from people who listened to my podcast, people would ring me and say, I feel like I've just been in your living room listening into a conversation you had with a good friend. And even the guests who I didn't know before we started podcasting, we quickly developed that rapport, which made us sound like we'd known each other for a long time. And so that personal touch is something that I really love, because it helps people get to know you and like you a lot more quickly than other forms of communication do. And, you know, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So if you can build that relationship quickly through a podcast, then you've got much more opportunity to do things from a business perspective with them. So the other thing I love about podcasting is if you're not a good writer, you can still get your message out by speaking it. And you can either speak it in a conversation with someone, or you can speak into the microphone and share your thoughts. And then once you've got that recording, you can have it transcribed and create additional forms of content from that transcription. So one of the things that you could do with it, for example, is turn that transcription into a series of blog posts or some articles or some social media posts. So it really gives you a lot more flexibility to do something with your knowledge than just writing, you know, an article or a blog post.
That's Mel Kettle. Sally Foley is a productivity and leadership expert. She's embraced podcasting to grow and engage her audience. Her podcast is called People and Management.
I really started it because of two reasons. Now, the inward or internal reason or a practice reason, business reason, is because I thought it would help me be more visible, there'd be more around the branding. It's another way, another element of SEO. People would see me here, there and everywhere if I also had a podcast in conjunction to everything else that I do. I understood that podcasting was becoming even more and more popular, so jump on the bandwagon. So that was the internal or the business reason. Now, the other reason of why I started the People and Management podcast was because it was an opportunity to have conversations with people who are not in my area of expertise, but I knew that they could help bridge a gap and educate, have an insight different to mine, and I knew that it would help managers and leaders who do listen to the podcast, and that's the case as it has been. There's also episodes where it's just me talking about a certain particular management skill or an insight or a book I've read. However, the majority and the podcasts I really love to do are the ones where we're just recording a conversation. So that's why I did them. A visibility piece as well as a opportunity to spread more insight and education.
Why do you think podcasting is engaging for audiences?
One of the things I absolutely love about podcasting, or why I'm attracted to it, is because I love the conversation. I think I am the stereotypical extrovert. I get a lot of energy and a lot of motivation and a lot of stimulus from being amongst other people. So having a conversation with someone and you're just bouncing backwards and forwards with each other and watching the ideas go wherever they go is, to me, that just lights me up. So podcasting, particularly when I'm interviewing, or as I like to say, recording a conversation, that to me just lights my day up. And almost at the end of every episode where I have had a conversation with someone, we sit there and say, that was really cool, wasn't it? You know, that was awesome, because we shared with each other and we raised each other up. So that to me, and I think the people who listen to the podcast and the people who who respond to the podcast tell me similar things. That, I loved hearing that one when you talked to such and such about XYZ. I really got a lot out of that, and it was a great conversation.
What are the lessons you've learned?
The lesson that I have is that if you do go to start a podcast, it's worth having a lot of episodes already under your belt. Now, I had a few, and I already had a running list, which was great. But even more, if you think you've got enough, then triple it. That's what I would say, particularly if you want to make sure your podcast is a regularly produced show as such. The other thing, actually, that I think is a massive lesson learnt for me was I had quite a few things recorded and just sitting in the back of the filing cabinet of my computer gathering dust because I didn't know how to actually produce a podcast. And I still don't. I outsource it.
And do you have any advice to anyone else thinking of doing podcasting?
Make sure that you're clear about what it is you want to achieve. Make sure you know the style that you want your show to be, and who is your listener? Who do you want to actually reach when it comes to sharing a message?
That's Sally Foley. And finally, Andrew Ford of Social Star is an entrepreneur's guru. He helps those in the corporate world who want to get out and start their own business. His podcast is called Bob, Build Your Own Business. Andrew's a firm believer in the benefits of podcasting.
Podcasting is more difficult than writing blogs. However, blog writing is becoming harder and harder to distribute, and it's just not as engaging. So audio, I believe, is the most engaging format, better than video, which a lot of people would disagree with. But I actually think audio, because you get the length of time. You know, someone's on a car trip or they're commuting on a train and they're listening to you on their headphones, so you're directly speaking to them. And radio talks about this all the time, but the benefits of audio. And they're getting to know your voice and the nuances of the voice, and you just can't get that in a blog. Blog is about the content, but it's very hard to get personality in there. I try really hard to get my personality, but when you're doing a podcast with someone, you're asking questions and you're laughing and just the things you pick up on, people are very intuitive. They don't know they're doing it, but they're forming an opinion if they like you and trust you from there. Now, the two things essential for a sale is credibility and likability, which equals trust. So if you can achieve that with audio prior to a client coming and sitting with you, they've already got trust. The next is the product a fit? Whereas a lot of people try and build trust in a sales meeting. You can't build trust and sell at the same time. You have to build trust first and then move on to a sales process.
That's Andrew Ford, Social Star. And that's it for another episode of Be Podcasting. As I mentioned, Nick will return next week. And from all of us at Be Media Production, thanks so much for listening.
Be Podcasting is produced by the team at Be Media Production. Managing Director Nick Schildberger, Executive Producer Heather Dawson, Head of Podcast Partnerships Chris Ashmore, and I'm Peter Letts, Director of Audio. For more about us and how we can help you use audio content to build engagement, go to be.com.au.